And we're delighted to have today the Secretary of State for Scotland, the Right Honourable Alistair Carmichael MP. And Alistair's going to be talking about that very thing, what the government can actually do to help. Alistair.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here with you today. I bring with me a beautifully crafted speech written by some of the finest civil servants that your taxes can pay for. And if anybody wants to read it, I'll make it available to you at the end of the session. I'm mindful, Mark, that you said at the start that this should be a conversation. I think it's been a magnificent conversation so far. And what I want to do in the time that's available to me is just offer you a few thoughts on some of the material that I've heard from you here in the hall this morning. I think if I can maybe just first of all echo the speech from Dick Walsh, and it is about the importance of understanding the fundamental interconnection between economic growth and population mass. Because you will not keep the critical mass that you need in your communities if you do not have the economic growth to keep them there, to provide the businesses, to provide the jobs, to give people a reason to live in the diverse communities in Argyll and Bute. And at the same time, you will not grow the economy in these communities without having the critical mass of population. And also, I think, not just the critical mass, but the proper mix as well. You have to maintain the mix between the professional, the technical, the skilled, the semi-skilled, and the manual workers as well. In some ways, I feel I'm kind of living proof of this. You know, some of you, no doubt, that I am myself a son of Argyll. I was born and brought up in Islay. I left Islay as a 17-year-old. I eventually qualified as a solicitor. I could not go back to Islay with a population of 3,500 and run a legal practice of the sort that I wanted to practice. I contrast that with the opportunities that would be available to young people from Orkney, where I now live, with a population of 22,000, which is capable of sustaining, I reckon, 5 different legal practices. And that's the opportunity that is available to you if you can maintain the population mass. You not just keep the numbers, but you also get the mix. I think it was Alex spoke about education and reluctant leavers. I'll be slightly controversial for a second. When I was 17 and in Islay, there was no way you would have called me a reluctant leaver. I couldn't wait to get out of the place. And as with the confidence that you can only have when you're 17, I predicted that there were 2 things I was certain about. I was never again going to live on an island, and I was never again having anything to do with farming. My parents are hill farmers in the Mull of O still today. And 6 years later, I was living in Orkney and I was married to a vet in farming practice. It just kind of shows that we need to get our young people out if they want to go. It's about giving them opportunities. And yes, it's great to have opportunities through the Highlands and Islands, University of the Highlands and Islands, if that's what people want. But also, there should be no constraint on the ambition of our young people. And if we've got young people who are good enough to go and compete in the top academic institutions in Glasgow, in Edinburgh, in Oxford, in Cambridge, in Harvard, in Yale, then we should be doing everything we can to encourage them to take these opportunities and then to give them something that they can come back to when they later in life feel that the time is right for them. My one regret about my attendance here today is that I'm not going to be here to hear the session with the young people in the afternoon, because as you take what you learn and what you distill from today's proceedings, remember please this, that you are constructing a strategy that is going to be something that they will then be expected to live with. And I suspect that's why they want 6 devices when they go to university. Because when I went to university, I took some devices with me. One was a battery-operated tape recorder, a stereo, and a portable television that I acquired when I was there. Young people these days have devices, and I see them with my own 13-year-old and 17-year-olds talking to people in other parts of the world, utterly randomly sometimes, and that's what they expect. So when you're designing your strategy for the future, as Tracy said, be strategic, but remember that actually it is for the future, and that sadly, if the rate of technological change, people of my age, as a 40-something, don't always know what the future is going to look like. Now, I want to touch a little bit, because it is relevant, on recent political events, constitutional events, and the referendum. You know that we have now settled our constitutional position, but I don't think that the deal is properly done unless and until we have completed and honoured the vow that was made by the party leaders in the course of that campaign. And that is why, and again to echo Dick's point, the work of Lord Smith of Kelvin and his commission is going to be very, very important. It is written into the remit that we gave Lord Smith that his work should go beyond the political parties, and it should bring in a whole range of different voices. In particular, we need to hear the voice of business in this, we need to hear the voice of unions, we need to hear the voices of churches and civic organisations as a whole, and we need to hear the voice of local government, and from right across Scotland, because we're going to have, or we're opening up a constitutional settlement in a way that we may not do again for decades still to come. And in order to do that, we have to give you a constitutional settlement which offers you the opportunities to take the themes that we're discussing this morning and to build them in our communities in a way that is going to work for people here in Mull, in Islay, in Campbellton, in Kirkwall, in Lerwick, as well as in the Central Belt. One particular area I think that I would like to see come out of the Smith Commission work, and that is the question of the Crown Estate Commission's ownership and operation of the seabed. I think that is something where we've already started the reform process, but here's an opportunity to get our shoulder behind it and to add some real heft to it. And again, to talk about some of the things that Tracy was talking about, and her work at SAMS, and Alex's vision of having a more holistic approach to the marine environment. Think what we could do if we were able to take control of that resource and to take the money and the opportunities that come from the use of that resource directly into our communities. And that's not necessarily devolving it from Westminster to Edinburgh, because if we've learned nothing else since 1999, we've surely learned that government in Edinburgh is just as capable of centralising supply and demand in Edinburgh as government in Whitehall has ever been. So a mechanism such as that which was spoken of earlier by the Scottish Fair Select Committee, which envisages communities themselves making demand for control of that particular resource, is one that I would like to see the Smith Commission examine. In my view, and it's a personal view, the days are numbered for the Crown Estate Commission as a monolith controlling the seabed around our coastal and island communities. And again, that's something that will matter here in Argyll and Bute in a way that it will not have a resonance in other parts of Scotland. Now, I can't remember who it was that said it. I think probably most speakers have said one way or another. But it's not governments that create jobs, it's businesses. Governments can do some things to help business. Firstly, a lot of the time they can just get out of the way and let business get on with it. I'm not a public service basher, but there's a tendency in government to regulate and occasionally to over-regulate. So we're always mindful and we're always in the market for listening to business to tell us what they want, what you want us to stop doing. But also, It really is the people who put in the hours, who sometimes put their homes on the line in order to build and grow a business, that will create the growth and who will create the jobs that will keep our communities in places like this, our diverse communities in Argyll and Bute, living and thriving. What we can do is we can use the machinery of government to provide opportunities for business. I want to just touch on a couple of these. We spoke earlier of transport infrastructure. Get that right in any rural, peripheral island community, and just about everything else falls into place. What we heard this morning? We've heard that it's quicker to get from Glasgow to Dubai than it is to get from Glasgow to London, but that it's also quicker to get from Glasgow to London than it is to get from Glasgow to Oban. What does that tell me? It tells me a number of things. First of all, it tells me, I think, that we are truly now living in a globalised world, but it also tells me that when we talk of infrastructure, we need to think much more broadly and holistically than just thinking of road and rail, and the connectivity issues that Alex has spoken about are going to be supremely important. That particular project that was shown very graphically on the map there is a good example of how Scotland stands to gain from having two governments. It is good collaboration between the United Kingdom government, Scottish government and British Telecom as the provider of the material on the ground. And secondly, and finally, there is the question of renewables and the opportunities that come to our coastal and island communities from getting that next generation of renewable development, especially in marine renewables, tide and wave energy. I think that has the opportunity to be transformative, but like other people, I am concerned that we are seeing this flatlining. Just last week in my constituency in Orkney, we saw one local construction company going into administration because they are not confident now that they are going to see the increased workload available to them because of the lack of grid connections. So getting the governments and the regulator and the transmission companies together round the table in the way that Ed Davey and Fergus Ewing have already done is absolutely essential to unjamming that particular logjam. For too long, we've just passed this around the table as a hot potato that nobody ever wants to move on first. That's got to change. It's my determination as Secretary of State for Scotland that it is going to change, and I now want to see the work that Fergus and Ed have started being taken on and moved on with an even greater degree of urgency. Finally, Dick mentioned in his speech the question of the Our Islands, Our Future agenda that was promoted by Shetland, Orkney and the Western Isles. What we have done with that agenda in the UK government is we have come up with a framework which hardwires island considerations into the thinking of government in London, offering them access to the people that they need most, the people like Ofgem, people like the Crown Estate, and also offering them opportunities to engage with the oil and gas industry through the pilot scheme, and also with the European Union and UCREP in Brussels. That was an initiative that was started in the islands. They came to us. They made their ask, we talked to them, and we have come up then with a framework which I hope will be durable long beyond my tenure in this particular job, and it will be durable because, in fact, the control of the agenda in the Our Islands, Our Future framework is now vested in the island communities. Do what you do today. Have some definite products from it. As others have said, be strategic. And when you have got your ask, come and talk to us, because I want to hear what we can do to help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.